Hey guys, I'm a Doink, and today I'm going to talk about whether or not you should try out Starsiege Deadzone, which is a free-to-play game on Steam right now in early access. Starsiege Deadzone calls itself a corridor extraction shooter set in the far reaches of space. It's developed and published by Prophecy Games, and it recently went into early access on July 18th, 2023. For those of you familiar with the extraction shooter genre, you already know what the general gameplay loop is. However, for those of you who aren't so familiar, essentially, you fight other players in AI who all have loot that you can keep if you extract successfully. In a nice twist, Starsiege also throws in a battle royale-like circle that slowly destroys the ship as the match progresses. Lobbies are made up of 12 players in solo queue or 8 teams of 3 in squad modes, totaling 24 players. Now, as someone who has several hundred hours in Escape from Tarkov, I want to give my first impressions on what I feel Starsiege gets right, and on some of the things that I feel like it could use some improvement on. Starting off, the atmosphere of this game is absolutely fantastic. I mostly played solo, which I think contributed a lot to this aspect, but even in squads, it still felt like a Dead Space light without all the different monsters. Entering some of the rooms, like the medbay or the barracks, they really felt lived in, and that's all tied together when you randomly see the corpse of a crew member as you're walking by. Some rooms have high amounts of fog, and that further added onto the feeling of being on a derelict ship full of rampant robots. Most rooms in Starsiege are really dark or almost pitch black, and you can't see a thing in front of you. This furthers the feeling of being on that abandoned ship, but it also intertwines into the fundamental gameplay. An example of how all of these different lighting aspects tie in together would be shooting out ceiling lights. In this case, a player can shoot out the lights and it'll let them hide better, and you can decide whether you're just going to hide from another player or you're going to try to set up a little ambush or something like that. Now, once you shoot out those lights, it's going to be incredibly dark in the room, so then you're faced with the problem of, do I use my flashlight to locate this player? And if you do, well, now you're giving yourself away pretty easily as well. So the game does a really good job of bringing together the environment and the lighting and just the overall general gameplay to really give you a dynamic feel when you're in these matches. So being a PvP extraction shooter, one of the biggest aspects that needs to be strong is audio, and I believe that Starsiege does a pretty good job with the audio. In my time playing, I didn't experience any parts where I was completely thrown off by audio, and I could fairly easily track other players based on their cues. So something like sprinting is much louder than walking, but you can easily hear players 1 or 1.5 rooms over if they sprint. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Another major audio cue is the fact that almost every room is connected by a door that takes a few seconds to be unlocked, and they make a fair bit of noise. Plenty of times I was able to ambush another player because I heard them opening a door, or if they ran from a fight, it was easy to tell if they closed the door behind them on their way out. This kind of gives you that brief moment of, do I chase this guy or just let him go, or maybe do I try to cut him off through another area? So now for some of the most important parts of the game, being gunplay and progression. Because the game's in early access, what's there at the moment is pretty solid. However, there were a few times when I got a little mad because it felt like I was playing Plants vs. Zombies. I feel like I'm using the pea shooter. My guns just don't feel impactful. They don't have that oomph to them. The time to kill feels like it's all over the place. And in one match, for example, I dump a mag into a guy, and it kills him before the mag is empty. In another match, I do the same exact thing, and this time I'm even getting headshots, and the guy is completely okay at the end of the gunfight. I understand that there are better tiers of weapons, and maybe my problem was that I didn't take in more green tier weapons, which, that's what was available to me at the time, but the time to kill just feels somewhat inconsistent. With that being said, I don't hate the gunplay, but I don't love it either. The guns feel like they lack impact in both sound and feeling, and again, this is early access, so that could change over time. One thing that I did like was the ability usage. Your character has abilities that you can use in-game, like an impenetrable bubble shield, or the initial scan that highlights players. These were pretty cool to see in that they change up the flow of gameplay, and it feels much more arcadey and fast-paced than traditional extraction shooters. The progression system in Starsiege was kind of refreshing. Playing matches earns you XP and allows you to level up, which gives you more abilities, perks to boost those abilities, access to better gear, cosmetics, inventory stash space, etc., etc. It really feels like you're being rewarded for playing the game. There are also contracts and seasonal challenges that you can complete to earn credits, guns, armor, that sort of thing for your loadout. These give you a really good objective for things that you want to do in the match, and as long as you're making progress towards those objectives, it is kind of like a meta progression. It doesn't matter if you don't extract. Like, for example, if you have a challenge to kill 7 robots with a melee, if you go into a match and kill 3, you're still going to keep that progress even if you don't extract. In extraction shooters, it's common that you drop everything on death. Everything that you took into the raid and everything that you looted in the raid is completely gone, and you don't get it back. For the most part, some games have things like insurance and that sort of thing, which you'll get your guns back or whatever it may be that wasn't looted. However, in this game, you permanently have your armor. So initially, I really like this, and I still somewhat do, as it provides a sense of meta progression for players who maybe have a bad streak and just can't seem to extract. I haven't gone far enough to see this in a higher level, but it is possible that as people get better and get higher tier gear, you'll see less equipped players going against absolute units who are kitted. I understand that this is just the way of these kind of games, as it was in Tarkov, but at least in Tarkov, I could see the other player was juiced, and I could choose not to engage with them. In this game, everyone looks the same, so it kind of feels like flipping a coin on whether or not the person you're playing against, is just absolutely kitted to the teeth with armor or not. In Starsiege, the loot, I think, feels fine. It did feel really nice to get higher rarity items from the big robots or from crates, and you do have a safe container to keep items in case you don't make it out successfully. The loot does feel valuable, as you could use it to craft higher tier weapons and armor, or you could just straight up sell it to fund even more gear. One initial gripe that I had with the loot system was that it feels like the stack sizes for things like consumables, for example, frag grenades or EMP grenades, were a little too small. You can only stack one at a time. However, this did kind of ease off as I played the game more, in which case I knew what to use, I knew what to keep, and gear kind of cycles in and out as you fail to extract. It is also worth mentioning that as I was editing this video, the developers did recently put out an update that increased loot progression. Specifically, there was a bug that they found that said that they were giving trash loot quality instead of the appropriate mission level rarity. With this new change, progression should feel a lot smoother than it did when I was playing it. While the game is certainly solid and has a really good foundation right now, there are some things that I would like to see changed or included. Maybe this is just my gotta go fast brain talking, but sliding would be a nice change of pace for things like tripwires or even just general movement. The sprinting feels a little bit slow, but you get used to it the more you play. Similarly, the jumping feels a little off. I don't know what it is. I understand that we're in space, so maybe that's just intended for it to feel so light, but I feel like it keeps you in the air for a little too long, and that, maybe some sort of mantling or vaulting would help alleviate that, and that you could get out of the air a little faster when you're trying to maneuver around the environment. Also, this might be a little nitpicky, but when selling to merchants, I feel like there should be a button that sells off all of my valuables in one go. It's a little annoying to have to sit through and click every single item one by one when, I have 6-7 different valuables that I want to sell, and then having to identify which is which, instead of just clicking a button that says sell all valuables and then boom, it's done. The last thing that I'd like to see implemented into the game is some sort of death stats for me. Currently, the game tells you who killed you, how much damage they did, and that sort of thing. But I would really like to see how much damage I did to the guy that killed me. Because sometimes it feels like you're in a fight for a prolonged period of time, and because of the inconsistent time to kill, you die, and then it leaves you wondering, how much damage did I do to the guy? And then you're just a little confused. Overall, though, I feel like the game has a really solid foundation, and it's a good time solo or with friends, but it isn't something that I can see myself playing for extended periods of time. Audio and atmosphere are well executed, and it really feels like I'm a raider on a derelict ship, but the gunplay is basic and doesn't have that oomph to it. The game rewards you for playing and doing well, extract or not, and the loot that you get feels valuable. If you're a fan of extraction shooters, or you're just looking for a fun game to play solo or with some friends for a few hours, definitely pick this up. After all, it's free, so why not? With that being said, feel free to let me know if you agree or disagree down in the comments, and thanks for watching my first impressions on Starsiege Deadzone.